Hello and welcome to this second first look exploring session looking at the Tragedy of Darius by William Alexander. This session we are going from Act 3 Scene 2, which is effectively a continuation of Act 3 Scene 1. We left off last session being, shall we say, a little disappointed with the very beginning of Act 3. We're really enjoying Acts 1 and 2. We had such high hopes for Act 3. Slightly undersold, but we have at least set the scene for what we're going to be doing today with the various relations to Darius being a bit sad, and the arrival at this moment of Alexander popping in with some sort of noise announces his presence. It's not stated what the noise is. I mean, we assume it's trumpets, but I don't know. Maybe it was something he ate. Reading today, Alexander and Bessus is...
I'm here to make noise and conquer.
Reading Regina and Narbazannes is...
Just like that. Emily C.A. Snyder, an actor, playwright, podcaster in New York City.
Reading Hephestion, Tiriotes, and Artabazus. Pronunciation's optional.
Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
And reading Sisigambis. I think I'm going to go over size today rather than sis. I'm going to go Sisigambis, a chorus in Act 3, and Darius is...
Liza Graham, I'm here to get conquered and have noise made at me.
Mm-hmm. And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I will also actually be reading something today, a couple of speeches by Patron, who turns up at some point. I will probably miss that point. I'd say I'm reading stage directions, but there are no stage directions. We got nothing. Infer your own. Fill in the blanks in your own imaginations. So, we left off last session in a tent. Someone's going to knock on the door, and yes, Alexander enters to the scene, still on stage with the entering Alexander is Sisigambis and Regina. The Virgo and the baby are presumably no longer on stage, or they're just silent. We don't know. They were on stage a minute ago, but there's no indications of whether they leave or not. And Hephestion may or may not enter at this point, may enter later. It is unclear. But whatever happens, Alexander enters the scene.
Rise, mother, rise, and calm those needless cares. I come to cure, not procure your woe. The duty which I owe those silver hairs doth grieve my mind to see you humbled so.
Most gracious prince, forgive me if I erred in taking him for you who stands you by.
I find no fault to see my friend preferred, even to myself. This is another I.
My sorrows so confounded have my mind that scarce I know myself, another less. My soul in such an agony I find as words, not tears, nor groans cannot express.
I pray you, mother, set those plaints apart. They vex me more than stern Bellona's broils.
The tender name of mother wounds my heart, whilst named by him who of that name me spoils. I was, woe that I was, a mother late of two fair sons, lights of my life. But one is dead, and in a worse estate the other lives, involved in woe and strife, like to the trunk of some disbranched tree which Aeolus hath to confusion brought, since spoiled of those brave imps which sprung from me, unprofitable stock I serve for naught.
I serve for naught, since serving him no more, who only may my blasted hopes revive. Lo, quite confounded far from what before, who him of me of myself deprive. I live without my half, without my whole, prodigious monster whom the world admires. I want the point, the pilot, and the pole which drew, addressed, and bounded my desires. Tossed by sad sighs and floods of bitter tears, I, save from ruin, look for no relief. By what I still feel plagued, but worse with fears. All comfort loathed, my glory is my grief. My soul seems to presage such disastrous chances, and warring with itself hath never peace. My heart surcharged doth faint in deadly traces. My eyes must grace the ground of my disgrace. Hell hath assembled all her horrors here. In the dungeons of this desperate beast, as in the dark Tartarian groves appear 1,000 shadows to bereave my rest.
Fair princess, spare those passionate complaints which may augment but not amend your harms. This voice which with your woe the world acquaints doth move me more than all the Persian arms. Take courage, madam, be afraid of none, that you may hope with what help I can afford. I swear by Jove's inviolable throne, and do protest by my imperial word, though for a while barred from your royal seat, you compassed here with troops of strangers stand, yet shall you still be used as fits your state, and may, as erst in your own court, command.
How can I command, whilst I am in thrall? What can I have, who, wanting one, want all?
Though brave it seem in some proud victor's sight to plague their victims and triumph in ill, the larger grow the limits of my might, the more I labor to restrain my will. What can be feared by them whom I defend? Foes have not power, and who with me remain, they dare not wrong, nor offer to offend the least in rank who doth attend your train. If any would impugn what I appoint, or would in ambush for your honor lie, or in discontent you but in any point, as Alexander lives, that wretch shall die.
What a host of evils where'er I go are still encroaching to o'erthrow my state. Must I be beholding to my foe and owe him love, to whom my love owes hate? Should he help me, who still his ruin plies? Heaven curse my heart, if strained with treason thus. Let death in darkness first entomb mine eyes, ere such a sight accepted be by us. I, Lord, am thine, and thine I will remain. Thy love was planted in a fertile field, which grateful now to thee to reward again, from flourished faith chaste flames for fruits doth yield, yet doth misfortune this good fortune bring. My constancy shall now be clearly known. Another might have loved an happy king, but I will love thee, although thou be overthrown.
I labor much to comfort in some measure this grieved queen that was a monarch's choice, whose woe doth make my victory no pleasure. For whilst she mourns, I cannot well rejoice.
Most mighty king, thou dost deserve indeed that as for Darius we should pray for thee, who dost so much in clemency exceed that thou bewailst our loss no less than he. Not only thou surmountst all other kings in glory rising from thy labors gone, and for those benefits which fortune brings, but in all virtues worthy of a throne. Thou dost vouchsafe on me more than I crave, the title of a queen and mother still. But I confess myself thy humble slave, whose life hath now no limits but thy will. The dreamed good that greatness gave forgot, my countenance shall be free from clouds of cares, and I'll allow of this my present lot as one who for my fate my force prepares. Yea, if this woeful woman here were free, who hath no heaven except her husband's face, I could content myself, great prince, to be the meanest handmaid that attends your grace.
As if your sons command all that is mine, and I will seek to second your desire.
Heavens recompense this courtesy of thine, which in all ages thousands shall admire.
I'm going to pause us there because I will put in a question as to potential action as to what's happening with the rest of the scene. But I think we should just unpack. There's a little confusion as to who's saying what to whom and about whom, because once again, William Alexander, use some names, please, dear God. Tell us who you're talking to, because I was just putting in the margin. Regina, is this an aside? When you start, because it's suddenly I'm sort of going, hang on, this scene's taken a strange turn. Are you declaiming love to Alexander? Hang on, that was quick. I felt that was not to him. Or not entirely. But yeah, let's see what the room thinks. Liza, do you want to leap in, and then Rachael?
Like an Olympic diver, I leap in there. I think it is confusing because it's not marked. So little is marked here. And there's a bit at the beginning of the scene that I want to talk about after we talk about this. Cool. But I believe that Statira Regina's speech, that speech probably is an aside and is not, even if heard by Alexander, possibly is not meant to be addressed to him. Because in the first half of the speech, she refers to Alexander as him. And then there's a thee in the second half of the speech that I mean, the poet could have given us more help here, but I believe the thee in the second half is Darius.
Rachael, then Emily.
I think that thee could be Darius or God or something, because if he's dead and she's aiming that, if the actor, playing this was to play it on a stage and they were sending it up to the people in the back, up there, as opposed to people in the pit, it would be much more clear on stage. I also think he's giving us something poetically that people do in real life, and he's putting it into characters that we act differently with different people. So her referring to Alexander as him, and referring to her dead husband as it changes the dynamics and it changes the distance, I think, between the characters that she's referring to. And there's these subtle shifts, like in yesterday in Darius' speech, how when he was talking about his wife, he was the verse would end with R, and when he was talking about Alexander, the verse was ending in N. Like, just these subtle linguistic shifts he seems to be focusing on.
Emily?
And that's actually so interesting about the reminder about the Darius. So confusing, because you get the clue at the beginning that it's dialogue. We're back in dialogue. We've just come from a series of scenes, and not from a series of, or even attempts at scenes. Like, and even the last scene between the three women, I think he felt was a scene, even though we felt that we were sort of talking past each other, maybe, or chorally or something. But he's writing scenes, and generally in scenes, you are talking to each other. The other thing that's confusing about his text is that in both this and Croesus, he uses parentheticals throughout so much of his speech, with a sense of like, okay, this is, an aside, this is lower, my voice is going to drop. Just a side note, in this play, I'm finding that his parentheticals are less helpful than they were in Croesus, which is just interesting. They're less playable by and large. But ergo, so I'm looking for that if it's an aside. And if I'm in scene, thus far, I've been in scene. So that was confusing to begin with. That first Regina speech, because Sisigambis, and Alexander, Mom and Alexander were chatting to each other, I had a question, even that first one of like, to what degree is this entire first speech an aside? To what degree is it heard? So that was a bit confusing. And that's why I was like, but then I speak to him in a couplet. Okay. And he's talking to me. And then am I in a side again? Because I'm talking about him, Alexander, the third person. So I must be kind of conferring with the audience. It's sort of a mini soliloquy aside. Okay. But then when you say thine, the first instinct, because it's I, parentheses, Lord. So what I'm getting as an actor is, okay, aside, these are what I'm feeling. He may be overhearing me. He may not. And then with the parenthetical and the thine and someone else that I was, a man I was just talking about and to in the scene, I was like, oh, okay, am I going to do what Darius was afraid of in the beginning and give myself to him? I was actually very excited by like, to be using a thine, like, ooh, that's playable, that's interesting. And then halfway through, I'm like, oh, I'm saying no to Alexander. So I'm talking to someone who isn't even there. This is Darius. Oh, shoot, I'm doing this all wrong. And I just want to punch the playwright a little, because mostly I'm like, dude, you have never been on the stage and your lack of stagecraft is showing.
Well, because, yes, Lord, if it was just, she'd said Darius rather than Lord, then that would all be fine. I don't think Regina's talking to anyone in the room. I'm wondering if actually this is a conversation between Alexander and Sisigambis, and Regina is just in a spotlight in the back, just going, because actually I'm not 100. I mean, I think there's occasional connections, but there's part of me that just thinks that it's sort of removed. I don't know if that fully works, but it's just how I started reading it. That she's not actually in the conversation at all. She's just commenting.
Which
I don't
is
know if
its
that fully
own
works.
thing. Which is its own thing.
Yeah.
They're negotiating on her behalf, and she doesn't even get to talk to him. Fine, Sir William. Fine, it's fine.
Rachael and then Eric.
I mean, if Regina's not talking to him, I mean, Alexander's come into a tent full of women. So, I mean, if Sisigambis, she's the oldest one, this is her, daughter or daughter-in-law, and her granddaughter, she could, if it was staged, you could have Regina on one end, Alexander on the other, Regina and Virgo on one end, and you could have Sisigambis in between playing defense. And that's why Regina is off on her own. She's there praying, because the way all three of these women are interpreting this situation is that there could be a possible, danger to their persons, physically or sexually, from him. And I think Sisigambis is just playing defense.
Eric.
Yeah, I was going to say that you can see why Emily was confused, because it's like the first speech is kind of picking up off what Sisigambis had said, which is why I was like, oh my god, spoken word poetry, oh my god, remix. But then it sounds like she's talking to herself, kind of. But then Alexander goes, fair princess, spare those passionate complaints. So I thought that was to Regina, but then obviously it's not.
Because it could, within the logic of Alexander.
Yeah. I think it is to Regina. That speech is to Regina, because at the end Alexander says, yet you shall still be used as fits your state, and may, as erst in your own court, command. And Regina replies directly to that.
Yeah.
I guess what the game is here is Alexander trying to convince the ladies that they're safe with him and he will defend them and they can have autonomy, and them reminding him what the real situation is, which is that they're his prisoners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's something at the top of the scene. Is this an appropriate time to
Yes,
talk
the
about the
perfect
top
time.
of the scene? Okay, the paucity of stage directions here is a bit of a puzzler because, let's see, what we glean from the text is Alexander has entered and presumably everyone else on stage has knelt or prostrated themselves, because he starts with "Rise, mother, rise." But there's something happened either here or before, but something happened, which is a historical anecdote, which has come down to us, that when the first time Alexander and Hephestion visited Sisigambis, the mother of Darius, she prostrated herself apparently to Hephestion instead of Alexander. And he corrected her mistake very gracefully by saying, there was no mistake, he too is Alexander. So there being no stage direction, I wonder if that's what happens at the top of the scene. If Alexander enters with Hephestion, and Sisigambis prostrates herself to him, and Alexander with his first speech is as it were taking charge and saying, no, it's me, and then she's all flustered because she knelt to the wrong guy. Alexander apparently was not that tall, and Hephestion was much taller, so he looked a bit more like a king.
Cool.
Rachael says, wasn't Hephestion his lover? The official answer is we don't know. The unofficial answer is almost certainly yeah. That whatever the sexy situation between them may or may not have been, they certainly were partners. That that Alexander viewed Hephestion as a partner in everything, and here he has him refer to him as his other self. So, love, anyways.
Yeah, we haven't officially finished the scene, but I'm sort of I paused at the point where I did because the remaining exchange is just between Alexander and Hephestion, and I'm wondering whether anyone else is still on stage or not. We will discover this in a moment, I'm sure, by the way the dialogue functions. But I just wanted to flag that up with a nice hard break to suggest that maybe this is in its own way a sort of separate unit of action. It may not be. I may be horribly wrong. I like being horribly wrong. It's fun. So we will continue the action in the scene with Alexander and co, and let's see where it goes.
Those captive princesses have pierced my soul, which even amidst our heaven have found hell.
Where's Hep? There we are.
His passion so what stoic could control, whom now to weep their tears would not compel. What age could erst such stately beauty show, which of perfection holds the highest place, and born to bring, though now they be brought low, do beauty beautify, give grief a grace? Sir, such a victory hath not been seen as you have gained, since conquering as appears the largest kingdom and the fairest queen that Asia vaunted of these many years, durst Letta's or Agenor's brood compare with that sweet queen, the honor of her kind. But as she is above all others fair, as far her daughters make her go behind. It seems at first that sorrow had been sleeping, then whilst those virgins in their grand dam's bosom, with weeping beauty and with beauteous weeping, did with a hail of pearl blast beauty's blossom, so large a power no prince on earth can have, as hath love's empire in their face confined.
What Hephestion? What doth thee deceive? Their folly seek to brag so brave a mind. Their Cupid entered an armed camp, and them who Mars have marched for sport appall. Must his soft seal even through hard metal stamp, and make who conquer men to women thrall?
We dare resist, whilst many 1,000 dies, the steely tempest of a world of men. But if from ivory orbs to sunny eyes do charge the soul, I know not how, oh then, secret power composed of hopes and fears, so charmed the mind that its strange thoughts conceives, and straight the heart, quaffed drunk by the eyes and the ears, doth staggering reel and full of fancies raves.
But yet in my conceit I scorn all such, and do disdain to yield myself at all. Yea, in that sort to bow I loathe so much, that rather Mars than Cupid make me fall. Should I be bound with frail affection's chains, as one oblivious of my former fame? No, no, this purpose still my soul retains. To balance nothing with a noble name. Oh, what great indignity is this, to see a conqueror to his lust a slave, who with the title of true worth were his, must vanquish vice and no base thoughts conceive. The bravest trophy ever man obtained is that which over himself hath gained.
I'm glad, my sovereign, that as you excel not only men, but Mars himself in arms, that from your mind you likewise may repel the flattering power of love's alluring charms, that virtue rare, whose rays shine in your words, with generous ardor doth inflame my soul, and o'er myself to me such power affords, that some brave deeds must straight this course control.
And we'll infer exit. There is no exit marked. I'm going to go with, that they're alone now. This will be a really weird conversation with an audience. Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of this. There's something. There's something quite disconnected about this. The situation we had before and the situation we had before, about the sort of conversations that they're having. That this suddenly the stakes of this conversation and this scene are very low. It's suddenly they're just sat down having a drink, having an outer, having an unwind. Someone brought up Campaspe, I think, in the chat. Was that Eric? Was that somebody else? It doesn't feel like it's within this play where we've just been talking about, hi, we're captives. Would you like to talk about how free we are again? And then I suppose, are we going with a sort of different kind of captive theme? Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure. Thoughts from the room. Rachael.
I mean, if you wanted it, if Hephestion is in real life, if they were partners, and Alexander, as Liza just said, he referred to him as he is also Alexander, and the playwright, Regina says at some points, referring to Darius, that he's the self from herself or something like that. That play on the one half of the whole. And I think Darius said it yesterday towards the beginning, but I can't recall. And I think somebody else, Alexander or somebody else, has referred to Hephestion in this way, in the scene. And you could play it like a testing of the relationship between the two of them, if it's a romantic relationship, or if a production wanted to portray it that way between the two of them. That if you took one of these hostages as your queen, you could continue your empire, with offspring, but it would create a division in that partnership, in that relationship between these two lovers. So will you choose me over your empire type thing? And maybe also some reveal that this danger that these women thought they were in is non-existent because there is a relationship between these two men.
Emily, and then Eric.
So what we have basically here is in each of, because we've got 4 little speeches between, well, 5 little speeches between Hephestion and Alexander. And in the last 4, we have each of them puts Cupid against Mars and keeps coming back to, we're manly men, you know, we'd rather fight. We want to fight. Huzzah, huzzah. Let rather Mars than Cupid make me fall, Alexander says. Or earlier, Alexander says, dare Cupid enter in an armed camp, and them whom Mars have matched for sportapal. Must his soft seal, even though hard metal stamp, and make who conquer men to woman thrall. So there's the sort of no girls allowed. And that is virtuous. In fact, that's what Hephestion sort of ends on, like, ooh, that virtue rare, whose rays shine in your eye, in your words. But as a consequence, again, I'm just sort of looking at this and going, this is so close to drama, and yet it misses all that drama requires, which is to have objectives and to pursue them. And I'm down with a rather comic scene of Alexander and Regina kind of meeting and going, yeah, so we're supposed to Marvin Gaye this right now, but like, I don't want you and I don't want you, and actually I'm in love with someone else, and oh my gosh, I'm in love with someone else too. Like, there could have been this lovely thing between them. There could have been Hephestion going, oh, is he gonna take someone because I feel threatened? There were all these opportunities for action and plot, and the weird thing is that he's set us up for this scene in the first soliloquy when Darius going, will this plot complication happen? And then we've been following down, waiting for this plot complication to happen. And then, I mean, I guess it's a little funny that they sort of go, yeah, nah, it's good. But then it just makes it go, well, why have I watched this far then? What story are you telling? What am I supposed to root for? Why are you telling it? If you weren't going to do this story, why are you doing this story? So those are questions I now have as an audience member. And it's at a very strange place because Act 3 is usually when it's a major turning point. It's where a major crisis occurs. It's where the world is set on fire. And I am confused as one who has seen dramas.
Yeah, because Act 1 sets up, Darius has lost, he has fears. Act 2 is setting up the other camp, Alexander's camp, as it were, and the question of what do you do with the captives that you have in play. And Act 3 has effectively those two camps sort of meeting and actually sort of going, well, we're not really going to do anything. And the sense that all this is status quo. They go, is Darius dead? He's not dead. Oh, phew. And are you going to mistreat us? No, I'm not. You're going to free us? No. But it'll be really nice prison. And then it's sort of, should I, am I in love with this, am I, these, they pierce my soul. Have they really? No, not really. I still quite like war. So it's a holding pattern so far. In a sense, it's, I wouldn't say it's nice, but it's interesting that nothing terrible has been added onto the layers of this initial awful situation. It's just there's just more stuff. I'll go to Eric then Liza because we're waiting on Eric.
I was gonna say that that line, those captive princesses have pierced my soul, which even amidst our heaven have found a hell. And then Hephestion launches into the anti-love stuff, or don't go for them kind of thing. I think it's kind of like sort of, if you read it in the context of the scene, Alexander just kind of turns to them and goes, "Yeah, this is kind of moving like in the way that they're being very loyal to their prince slash king slash son, whatever." And then like I don't know, Alexander after that just kind of reads as like sort of trying to convince himself that he's not in love, but I don't know
Well, it's a
where
question.
that comes from.
I'm not. I'm not 100% certain that that's actually what they're talking about. Whether that's exactly what they're saying, just simply that their plaints have pierced my soul. Their predicament has amidst our heaven. We've got a lovely prison here. They've found a hell, and because that wasn't really the thrust of the scene. The previous scene wasn't really about whether when we're talking about abusing prisoners, or just he's saying, "I'm not going to abuse you. You'll have all due rights, etc." And they're saying, "Well, we're still prisoners." I'm wondering whether we're actually misreading. Actually, we're buying into the Kool-Aid that Darius drunk in Act 1, and actually that this is actually slightly illusory. That's the fear. But actually, Alexander, maybe the point of the play is to say Alexander's not that bad for the conquering guy that he is, and actually that's the story. I'm not sure. Liza, sorry, it took a long time.
Yeah, I think that this scene is essentially character exposition for Alexander. Because one of the big questions that faces any character is, what do you do when someone is at your mercy and there are no consequences for what you do to them? And Alexander passes that test. There's also another question in balance here. In this age in general, the highest form of relationship between two unrelated people was heroic friendship between men. And the past may contain some misogyny. And in an age where military service was the norm for men, that relationship, that promoting that kind of relationship where you trust each other and would protect each other with your lives and would die for each other, there's an obvious benefit in promoting that. And so many plays have, there are so many plays that where a heroic male friendship is spoiled by one or other of them falling in love with a woman, or sometimes both of them falling in love with the same woman. So is it, is the heterosexual relationship, going... So one of the questions in this scene, especially after Darius's first speech of setup, is not just, is Alexander going to annex the affections of Statira Regina, but is Alexander going to abandon Hephestion, and it's the Campaspe question, really, abandon Hephestion, abandon his desire for conquest, for the softer pleasures of the bedchamber with ladies. And no, bros before hoes, wars before... Yeah. Anyways...
But that follows on from what, because that's what Parmenio was putting forward. So that nicely puts Parmenio in opposition with Hephestion quite nicely. Emily?
Yeah, I think, as you're saying, and I wonder if the soliloquy is... So as Liza pointed out, we may be reading a later revised edition of this play. I wonder if that first speech is the same in the 1604. But regardless, I think what we're seeing is this playwright has difficulty with setup. He doesn't necessarily have difficulty with what he wants to pay off all the time, but he may not tee it, in the same way that he doesn't start with nouns or proper names, and then he starts batting 1,000, as it were, but you're constantly playing catch up with what he meant to write, because he sets you up one way and then... although again, we may, we're reading this with our modern interpretation. So perhaps we're just completely off, and everyone else would read it, would expect something different.
Yeah, I mean, Croesus was quite episodic as well. So I'm wondering whether actually trying to look for a unified whole is actually a problem, that actually there are units of action that are doing slightly different things. And maybe we need more data. So let us do some additional data mining. Let's find out a little bit more as we go to two characters who we've not met before, who have a little scene all of their very own. Act 3, Scene 3, Bessus and Narbazannes.
Narbazannes, now ere the time be gone. Let us accomplish that which we intend, and join our wit, our force, and all in one. Ere known begun, but it may quickly end. You see the occasion, if our course we keep, to raise rare fortunes points us out the way. Yea, blames our sluggishness that as asleep, so great a purpose do so long delay. Lo, angry love our prince's part disproves, for fortune's worst, whatever he attempt from following him, the people's mind removes. Distress still is attended by contempt, crowned for so great hopes whoe'er did see, as heaven so happily breed in our mind. For since our king confounded is to be, we by his fall a means to rise may find.
I will most willingly perform my part, for I the same exceedingly allow. Dear wealth and honor, idols of my heart, if you I may enjoy, I care not how. Yet that this course may best be kept obscure, our care must seem for all our country bent. When masked with zeal, crimes are reputed pure. A show of good doth vulgar minds content. In dangerous plots, where courage joints with art, let slow advice, a quick dispatch be used. What can, save success, justify our part? Who must command, or come to be accused?
To Alexander, one was sent of late to speak of peace, whose speech was spent in vain. So that thus tossed, most desperate is his state, who peace cannot obtain, nor war maintain. To clear his thoughts, which many doubts do sway, he now craves each man's mind whose squadrons leads. This for our purpose must prepare the way. Those who would compass kings need crafty heads, and that to gain which we so much esteem, we can upon no means more safe conclude than crooked counsels that do upright seem, to mask ourselves and others to delude. He must, advised by some, renounce the space, the show of power, and from affairs retire, that for fashion one may use his place, not as usurped, but as at his own desires, so that he may try if others can bring back that which his fortune's ebb hath borne away. Then he again his diadem shall take, and as before the regal sceptre sway.
Well, then amongst ourselves to fly debate, which such great actions oft-time undermines. I yield that you possess the highest seat, and will my faction frame for our designs.
All that is one which of us to receive it, since everything doth equally belong us. I'll take it for the form, this one who have it, for we will part his kingdoms all among us. But if he condescend to this, we crave the judgments rash, which would at first seem good. Let him not think us two such fools to leave that which so many else have bought with blood, who once advanced would willingly go down, and propped with power, not love and state to stand. This not the custom is quite a crown. When one hath known how sweet it's to command, this name of faith, but to get credit feigned, is weighed with kingdoms lighter than a crown. And even in them whose thoughts are most restrained, a scepter's weight would press all goodness down.
Yet of my thoughts some doubt new counsel claims, and with huge horror aggravates disgrace. The strain of treason still attends our names, and with our error burdens all our race. Our purpose must accomplished be with pain, and we, though pomp a space appease our souls, shall find afflictions to disturb our reign, and be, when dead, defamed by famous scrolls. A sacred title of a sovereign king doth work a terror more than can be thought, and majestic to brave my mind doth bring, whose countenance only strange effect have wrought.
To idle sounds and frivolous reports give straight a passport, for they last not long, and what thou dost allege not much imports. A crown may cover any kind of wrong. What heinous thing so odious is by nature, which for a kingdom not committed is? To be a king, let me be called a traitor. Faith, if for aught may be broken for this. Those are but feeble brains which fancies load, with timorous dreams which bare surmising brings. Who fear vain shadows must not walk abroad. Two wary wits dare never work great things. If our brave project happily succeed, as now I doubt not, but it shall do soon, we straight will numbers find to praise our deed, and sooth us up in all that we have done.
Now that the time and manner may be sure, the Bactrian bands shall all attend in arms, yet feign a cause that he may live secure, and be surprised not looking for alarms. Then through the camp a rumor must be spread, that hopeless Darius hath despairedly gone by violence to dwell amongst the dead, which, as much grieved, we must appear to moan. The Persians may with promises be pleased, so to disarm him of all his native powers. Then taking him, our thoughts may be all eased, for whilst he is our own, we are not ours. Till strong with titles, we with power command his shadow shrouds, while rights are forced or feigned, and his to daunt, or strangers to gain stand, to raise our state his show must be maintained. To Alexander, after we will send, and offer him his foe to bondage brought, then crave that us his favor may defend, as those who all things for his good have wrought. Then, if we thus his grace cannot procure, but that he us with rigor do pursue, with Darius's death we shall our state assure. Then first our force, and next the wars renew.
Let us henceforth for nothing be dismayed, but strive ourselves courageously to bear. This dangerous action would not be delayed, lest time make him to doubt and us to fear.
Boo, hiss. Yeah, it was a bit difficult to get into it, but once you got down to it, and now here is my evil, cunning plan, and it suddenly came to life. Just going, yeah, there's some stuff there. There's some Darius. Oh, oof. He's in trouble, man. He's in trouble. Yeah. So plot's happening. Is this a new hare that we're chasing? Is it like we're done with the Darius in the first half of the play set up his hare, which actually sort of was weirdly batted aside, and now we have a new hare to chase. Interesting. Emily.
We do. I don't know if I trust the playwright to do it, though. That's the thing. I'm like, okay, great. Okay, new plot. But like, you didn't give us the other one. I was excited that the very beginning of this scene, we say the name of one of the characters, which is like radical for Alexander. Now,
but you didn't reciprocate.
I don't reciprocate.
No.
I don't say his name because whatever. We also don't say which king we belong to. I think Alexander, but I'm still not sure. And throughout my speech, especially the last one, because, okay, so in the chat, right before Narbazannes' final speech there, I was asking, like, we've said we have a cunning plan and we agreed to it. Have either of us said what the plan is? And then finally, I did give the plan, but once again, Sir William coming in late with all the explanation. You have to sift through a scene, then he tells you what's going to happen. But I don't know if I trust him to do the plot he sets up. So we're going to find out.
Yeah. The Narbazannes is a Persian traitor, according to a note I got here, and Bessus is a governor of Bactria. So
Thank you.
I was assuming that as they're going to be betraying Darius, that they're more technically on his camp. Yeah. So yeah. There's that sense of you could tweak this and make this a tighter scene. But once you get to the meat is good. There is some good meat in here. I'm enjoying.
It's fun to play.
We don't need to linger, I think, on longer on that, especially when we've got a chorus coming up, and we've enjoyed the choruses. So let's see what the chorus makes of Act 3.
Time through Jove's judgment just huge alterations brings. Those are but fools who trust in transitory things, whose tales bear mortal stings which in the end will wound. And let none think it strange, though all things earthly change in this inferior round. What is from ruin free? The elements which be at variance, as we see, each the other doth confound. The earth and air make war, though fire and water are still wrestling at debate. All those through cold and heat, through drought and moisture jar. What wonder though men change and fade, who of those changing elements are made? How dare vain worldlings vaunt of fortune's goods not lasting, evils which our wits enchant, exposed to loss and wasting? Lo, we to death are hasting, whilst we those things discuss. All things from their beginning still to an end are running. Heaven hath ordained it thus. We hear how it doth thunder. We see the earth burst asunder. And yet we never ponder what this imports to us. Those fearful signs do prove that the angry powers above are moved to indignation against this wretched nation which they no longer love. What are we but a puff of breath, who live assured of nothing but of death? Who was so happy yet as never had some crossed, though on a throne he sit and is not used with loss? Yet fortune once will toss him when the least he would. If one had all at once Hydaspes' precious stones and yellow Tagus gold, the oriental treasure and every earthly pleasure, even in the greatest measure, it should not make him bold. For while he lives secure, his state is most unsure. When it doth least appear, some heavy plague draws near, destruction to procure. World's glory is but like a flower, which both is bloomed and blasted in an hour. In what we most repose, we find our comfort light, the thing we soonest lose that's precious in our sight. For honor, riches, might, our lives in pawn we lay, yet all like flying shadows or flowers enameling meadows do vanish and decay. Long time we toil to find those idols of the mind, which had, we cannot bind, to bide with us one day. Then why should we presume on treasures that consume, difficult to obtain, difficult to retain, a dream, a breath, a fume, which vex them most that them possess, who starve with store and famish with excess.
Chorus continuing some really fun, cheerful, happy discourse. I do love this chorus. I love it. Starve with store and famish with excess. There's some really nice singers in there. All cheerful, all happy, all making me feel the joy of spring. But there's yeah. Any thoughts in the room? We don't. By the way, don't feel forced if you got nothing. But Liza.
Well, just this chorus, despite the bleak message, which again is something that's recurred since ancient times. The medieval poem "Worldest bliss ne last no throw" occurs to me. So despite the bleakness of the message, is, I think, gentler than the first two choruses we've had, which were pointing out faults and condemning them. And this one is just basically, yeah, no matter how fortunate you are, your life could still suck tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the previous two choruses also had the advantage of following relatively tight acts, whereas this act is a bit all over the place structurally, so it's not like you're able to respond with a clear message about what the act was about, or respond thematically, whereas this is more, yeah, let's do some stuff. Any more before we dive into Act 4? Eric.
Well, it kind of links thematically with, I think it was one of the things you had yesterday, where someone said even to be happy is dangerous or something along those lines. And it's like, well, we know, we've heard it. Like, I mean, if the course is like this in the past two acts, in the previous two acts, it's kind of, driving home the message.
Yeah. Emily.
Not terribly important, other than to pull out what we were all loving in the chat. What are we but a puff of breath, who lived as short of nothing but of death? As sad as that may be, it's a fantastic couplet. But it's interesting to see that he is playing again with time, though love's judgment just huge alteration brings. That he's playing again with meter in the chorus, which I appreciate. Playing as well with some sort of incredibly complicated rhyme scheme, which I appreciate that there's like a consistency for the playwright, for the chorus in playing with rhyme, which does make me wonder though, I wish I could go back and ask him when he wrote the chorus in relation to the rest of the play. Like, did he write the chorus almost as a commentary afterwards, during it? It would just be fascinating to know, because it is so very different from the structure of the verse in everything else.
I mean, that's following pretty much all the choruses we've done in these neoclassical things. So it seems to be a thing. That's where you experiment and go for it. What sort of mood do you need to be in when you do a chorus like this? Because it's got this weird energy to it that's almost working against its actual own nature. It's a really interesting style. Eric.
I was gonna say that, as a goth, this kid, I mean, if he was a teenager, I can't imagine him as a teenager just like sort of writing, what are we but a puff of breath, who live assured of nothing but of death. It just sounds very sort of, someone who doesn't go out in the sunlight very much.
Goth. I call goth.
Yeah, I was going to say this feels like the kind of project that one does late at night, never seeing the sun. Anyway, we should dive into Act 4, I think, because Darius is back. Darius, who we haven't seen for 2 acts.
Yes, and we've overheard our 2 baddies plotting to tell everyone he's dead, and then maybe kill him, or maybe present him to Alexander. He's already Alexander's prisoner, so I'm not sure what more they can do, but I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure. I think it was more that he's vanquished and everyone else was prisoner. I think he wasn't quite prisonerified, technically. I'm not sure if that was made clear or not. But yeah, he's maybe he was more on the run or something. I don't know, Maybe the play will give us more data, or maybe it will contradict and confuse us. Anyway, what we have here is Darius and Tiriotes, who is a eunuch, apparently, according to the... I don't know if that makes any difference to the way the scene plays, but it's a bit of data that the character description at the beginning gives us. Along with, as I say, Bessus and Narbazannes, these are just down as traitor. That's how they're described. So it doesn't have an exclamation mark. I don't know why I performed it with an exclamation mark there. I don't know. Anyway, Darius and Co. Act 4, Scene 1.
Must I poison now my prince's ears with news the worst that ever burdened fame? Had I as many tongues as I have tears, all would not serve my sorrows to proclaim.
Great signs of grief I in thy face discern, and spare not to report this heavy cross to one I fear whom it doth most concern. Is death, disgrace, destruction, treason, loss? Tell on the sum of horror at the first, with no ambiguous words my pain prolong. A wretch for comfort craves to know the worst, and I have learned to be unhappy long. What least I speak and yet suspect too much, art thou the trumpet to proclaim my scorn, which must wound me? But no torment such as this to her which that disgrace hath borne.
She was not wronged, as you have wrong conceived. The gods from harm did study to preserve her. She from your foe such favor hath received, as from her subject who were bound to serve her. But what a volley doth my voice prepare of woes to charge your ears. Woes full of dread, would God ere I my message can declare, that I may die in saying she is dead. And was it not enough, poor wretch, alas, that I beheld her die and would have died? But that I must, armed with sad tidings, pass to wound all them who hear what I have spied. See how he stands, moved with those words of mine, as if by grief arrested unto death.
Yet doth the sun on my affliction shine, and clear the air, though tainted by my breath. Can I live? Look them in the face who have my o'erthrow, shameful o'erthrow, seen? How I vanquished with disgrace did lose at once my kingdom and my queen. Heaven bruise me all to powder with thy thunder, that I no more may in the world remain, the object of thy wrath and fortune's wonder, spoiled of all hope, yet kept for greater pain. Art thou dead? And do I live behind thee, thy faulty husband? Think'st thou so to fly? If it be thus, then know I where to find thee. This only grieves me, that too late I die. O Alexander, what such heinous ill have I done thee, that thou requitest me thus? Whom of thy friends or kindred did I kill? This cruelty comes undeserved of us. Though justly thou intended hadst this war, Mars from his rage made women always free. This tyranny shall all thy trophies mar, and still to thy reproach reported be.
Thus of that prince you without cause esteem. I know her death him grievously displeased, a wondrous thing which few or none would deem. He wailed it long, and could not be appeased. Even as my sovereign now, then did he smart. And when he came to calm your mother's grief, as acting not his own, but even your part, he seemed to need and not to give relief.
If any sparks of that respect remain, which much with thee should duly weighed import, I pray thee, Tiriotes, now be plain, or else strange torments shall the truth extort. I loathe to let this question scape my mouth, which both I blush to crave and long to know. And can it be that this transported youth not urged to have that which I only owe? Could this fierce prince, even in his flaming age, have such a beauty purchased by his toils, yet not seek, forced by affection's rage, her honor's ruin And by pleasure's spoils? Speak frankly now, and tell what fatal shelf hath crushed my treasure's bark and me defaced. The fear of ill is worse than ill itself. They twice do die who die and die disgraced.
Let not those love-bred fears abuse your thought. By all the world no fable I contrive, if partially I speak, or lie in aught, earth open wide, and swallow me alive. He whom your grace so wrongfully suspects hath not in any sort your queen abused, but as his sister still in all respects as chastely and as honorably used. When angry Jove subverted had our state, and viewed our thundered troops' disordered flight, light fortune then, who flattered us of late, did make our state a mirror of her might. For, having found a crown soiled on the ground,
Oh, endless shame which never can be cured.
we straight imagined that some cruel wound had killed our lord, and wailed it as assured.
Would God I then had died as I desired, to have prevented those ensuing arms, whilst ere mine honour and my hap expired, a crown my head, a queen enriched my arms.
But Alexander, having heard our cries, sent one to learn the cause that moved our woe, who finding whence our error did arise, gave full assurance that it was not so. Then he himself did to our tent resort, and with the mildest words he could conceive, your mother, wife, and children did exhort, such terrors vain, since but surmised, to leave. And he protested that they should expect no harm of him their courage to appall. Then all things did with great regard direct, that no man might endamage them at all. Thus when they were against all dangers armed, I think for fear, for who would not have feared, lest such rare graces might his mind have charmed, he never more before her face appeared. Else generous virtue, jealous of each thing, which, tempting reason, senses might allure, what rare restraint in a victorious king, he fled what fault or scandal could procure, he doth his fame above all things prefer, and will not be where it may blemish find, nor give his eyes commodity to err, lest thoughts impure might strive to stain his mind. He whilst that she was sick did loath delight, and gravely grieved, all pomp and pleasure left.
Oh, hateful heaven, that with such hellish spite the world's chief treasure, nature's glory, reft.
When he beheld death's triumph in that face, which had triumphed o'er such a monarch's heart, with witnessed woe, even passionate space, the lookers on did much commend his part. And when sometime his dolour had o'ercome, his funeral rites solemnly to decor, he used such honour as might well become the Persian pomp in prosperous times before.
O power supreme, that of great states disposest, and ratifiest thy will with fearful thunder, who as thou pleasest placest and deposest uncertain worldlings, now above, now under, I pray thy deity in my soul's distress, if that the inhabitants of heaven can hear the plaints of them who this low point possess, or that the immortals can give mortals ear, this favour only do I last require. Establish first the sceptre in my hand, but if through my desert or thy desire the race of Cyrus must no more command, since angry heaven so high a hate contracts that I must needs my diadem forego, let him succeed who proves in all his acts so mild a victor and so just a foe.
And we're going to pause there at where there's an indicated scene break, though I'm not sure how that's actually functioning. His wife's dead. And actually, I mean, we know she's dead. I think she just dies. She's just got sick and died.
She gets, yeah.
And that's it. And it's like, I just went, you know, they were recapping stuff that had happened in the previous act, and I was sort of going, oh, right, okay, right, I know where we are, so she's going to die in a bit. Oh, hang on, how did she, I had to go back and check, they mentioned she was sick at some point, I seem to miss things, and so nobody's fault. No great plot. Just died.
Yeah. I mean, we're in neoclassical territory. We don't do deaths on stage, even though it would have been like every playwright worth their salt would have been shaking William Alexander by the shoulders and going, no, give her a death scene, have Alexander weeping and her mother wailing and her dog being very sad and the traitors feeling sad for give her a death scene. We saw her, she was perfectly okay apart from a fainting fit last time we saw her. But no, the person we've never met comes on to Darius, who we're only seeing for the second time, and says, your wife, bad news, dead, very sick, not Alexander's fault.
Yes, but once again, it is Anne Alexander's fault. Once again, that because the text in terms of dialogue hasn't actually declaimed her as a name and only mentions the word queen quite late in the day, it's not 100% because we have a scene with 3 women in it, so we've for a lot of this there's a slight thing of which one's dead. I'm assuming it's the queen, but I suppose it might have been the mother or the daughter. They'd all be bad. And what's happening to the rest of them, and then it recaps. So there's a sense of there's a lot of material here between this and stuff in Act 3 where I'm going moving some stuff around. Maybe this sort of works, and we could tidy this into something that's a bit more satisfying. But it's just the fact that the information is coming at us in a way that doesn't make me take it in, that is frustrating me. Because when it is good, it's really, really strong. But it tends to put the payload of actual exposition quite late in the day. And in ways that are not quite there. Urgh. That's my official response. Urgh. And Liza's resorting to her support animal after this. Other thoughts. I liked the sort of leapfrogging line that went with Darius's interruption, which seems to where the servant. For having found a crown sword on the ground, we straight imagine that some crew would, and that's he's basically continuing his sentence with Darius just doing his interjection in the middle of it, and I thought that was quite nicely done. Actually, I thought that was cool. Rachel.
No, because everybody else keeps bringing up how he doesn't say these things until later on in a speech or later on in the game. I think the poet self of him, that's where that plays against him, because I think that's something that would work better in poetry but not dramatically on stage, that you have a slow reveal that people can do in poetry because they can go back and reread it, but in drama it's like in musicals that they have the rhyme scheme be straight rhymes so that you can understand it immediately, that you don't get that immediate understandability in the in drama. So yeah, maybe I think that's just where it's coming from with him, is that he hasn't adapted to the medium.
And of course, in his mind, he's not trying to a degree. It's if he's thinking of this as just publication, it's us. And the thing is also, it's that thing of thinking about what we would do with a text like this. Is even if we were thinking of this as poetry, even if we were thinking of would do it as an audio thing or something that isn't trying to be dramatic. Even reading it, I'm going, I can't quite figure out what's going on. So there's an element of actually, even as poetry, there's something slightly unsatisfying about the way some of these scenes are structured. But then we didn't read the argument at the beginning. If we'd read the argument, we'd all be fine. So that's my bad. I almost made us read the argument, and then I thought, I'll sod that. Emily.
teaches us.
Yeah.
Yeah, to that question of poetry versus drama, I think it's so confusing because, again, it comes so close to drama. It's written out as drama. This play, people are talking to each other, not past each other. So, like, it increases when people would have a long speech, which could almost be a set poem. I'm more inclined, even though it is formatted as a drama, but it's not behaving as a drama because no one's talking to anyone. And so my brain functions in a slightly different way. But as you were saying, Rachel, about how poetry functions versus how drama functions. So for drama, I always tell, I work with a lot of young playwrights, and I always tell them that you have to have your thesis statement up front, and then you can follow the idea down. Because, yeah, it's an auditory medium. The audience is listening. They don't have your book in front of you, and they're about 7 seconds behind, so they need to get caught up. But what was interesting is I was listening to Glyn Maxwell, who is a UK poet, librettist, and verse dramatist living now. And he was talking about how young poets, and sort of the trick of poetry, is possibly sometimes to write around the thing. To write, if this were a drawing, to draw the white space, to mark out the white space, not necessarily to mark out the thing itself. But I'm finding that even so, you need to ground us with something. So as you're saying, I'm not sure he's even doing the work of poetry necessarily, at least in this scene. In other places, he will give us a lot of images. The chorus has a lot of images. This is still personalized. Darius, beautifully done by Liza, a lot of I, a lot of thou. It's still personalized. It's still enactable, as opposed to just sort of talking images around an idea. So it's this funky thing that's not quite working like poetry, not quite working like drama. And I'm thinking, Rachel, of what you were saying, that we're watching an evolution of a writer through these works, which feels accurate.
It's the narrative drive that I'm currently frustrated about. I'm afraid I'm going to cut everyone off because we really need to read the last scene. But hold on to any thoughts, throw them in chat, and hopefully they'll pick them up. Now, Act 4, Scene 2, I don't know if this follows on from the previous scene or not. It's slightly confusing. Or whether this is a totally different scene and we've just faded to black. Lights back up again, because Act 4, Scene 2, lots of people on stage. We don't know what happened to the servant. Doesn't appear to still be on. And we have Darius, Artabazus, Narbazannes, boo hiss, Patron, and Bessus, boo hiss.
If joined by fates with men of dastard minds, who to a noble death base life preferred, I should not waste my words among the winds, but labor would that time might be deferred. Oh, I repent I proved your worth too much, who still have followed me in all estates. I rather should than doubt that you are such press to prove worthy of so worthy mates. Ye only rest of all that I conducted, of whose great force and faith, which many sing, I by 2 fights and flights have been instructed. Yet having you, I think myself a king. He hath placed traitors in my towns most ample, not that he honors them, he hates their humor, but to seduce you too by their example, then banish all for every little rumor. Ye have not to my fortune had regard, but freely followed my evil-fortuned wars. Yet though that I might not, Jove would reward, and all the world extol you to the stars. How long shall I a vagabond remain, and fly a stranger who my right would reave, since by one battle we may reobtain all that we lost, or lose all that we have? Like those vile traitors whom I will arraign to hold me up, shall I go cast me down? Must Darius only by entreaty reign? No, none hath power to take or give my crown. I shall not my authority survive, nor will I proffer a submissive breath. My hand shall hold a scepter while I live. My head shall bear a diadem till death. If those frank thoughts that do possess my soul such flames of virtue kindled have in you, a Macedonian never shall control our noble acts, nor laugh to see us bow. My state may testify frail fortune's change. May she not him o'erwhelm as well as me? Though still resolved, your course confirms me much, whom no disaster could divorce from me. What man can doubt whom heavens do back by such, when bragged with bondage fighting to be free? My courage swells to see you marching forth, whose force and faith, which all the world doth sing, oft cleared by proof, though fortune envy worth, might serve to make, far more to keep a king. He gives our rebels towns, not moved by love, each prince, though using them, all traitors hates, but that their course to take, this might you move, his turn once served, so forfeiting your states. Ye, to my fortune have not had regard, as of my peace, so partners of my wars, which though that I might not Jove... This is repeated text? How weird. Jove would reward, and all the world
let's just make sure that we're not just repeating stuff for the sake of it. I'll change.
I think someone's copy-pasted this bit twice.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay. Treasure rain. Decor.
Okay, I think I've found where the joy.
Yeah.
Where the join is.
Yeah.
Ah, yes. It seems to repeat itself several times.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Let me. I've been idly scrolling through a parallel text online.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm muted, so you haven't heard any of the things I've been saying. Okay.
I did hear some, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, several times. Very, very odd. I'm just trying to figure out where the end must be, basically.
The end is a laurel or a cypress shall decor.
Yeah, but which time?
Presumably the first time.
Yeah, I'm trying to find where the first time is. I was thinking, well, it's nice it's not so ridiculously long a speech.
Yeah, it joins in the middle of the page. You've already said a laurel or a cypress shall decor, and then it joins it. To hold me up shall I go, cast me down must Darius only by entreaty rain.
Okay,
and that's the double. So I think you've done the speech.
When you put this on YouTube, you can just cut after a laurel or a cypress shall decor.
Yeah. Excellent. Interesting. Okay, that's nice. Make a big note. Cut. And we'll all change positions, and it will look really weird, and we'll never explain it. Okay. Just for the sake of versus similitude, and just to give everyone a run in, and because you've said some of this twice already, just give us a couple of lines in, just to give Artabazus a sense of flow.
Let's see. Think of your ancestors, I you exhort, who made the Grecians tributaries ever, and of whose wondrous acts men do report great things, the fame whereof shall perish never. Shall future ages in your praise be dumb, whilst they your father's memory adore? I am resolved. My triumph or my tomb, a laurel or a cypress shall decor.
So the reason for the headache is actually they are slightly different.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
how
that's why I'm looking at that, because it says your father's
Yeah.
name at the door
So
further
what
down.
I think we've got textual variations that
Oh,
are colliding with each other. I wouldn't worry about it. It just means this is just going to confuse how we cut this down later. We're just going to look like I'm going to look like right idiot. Basically, it's my fault. It's my fault. So ultimately, that's fine. Let's just move on because we're running low on time now. So Rachel, pick up the text from your speech, and I'm hoping this problem will not repeat itself.
What doubtful silence thus your thoughts detains? We need advice with naught but with our swords. He who the Persians' wanted worth retains will answer now with deeds and not with words. Let us accompany our king in arms through bloody squadrons to this fatal strife. No profit can be had without some harms. By slaughter only we must look for life. And when our host, as I hope, doth prevail, our country shall have peace, we praise of right. And if our fortune, not our courage, fail, we die with honor in our sovereign's sight. Let us, if vanquished, scorn base breath to buy. A noble death may greater glory give. Do to o'ercome, and yet not fear to die. 'Tis needful that we fight, not that we live.
Oh, my words will first your majestic displease. Yet duty makes me speak where silence spills. The best physician cures a sharp disease with some sour potion that corruption kills. And skillful pilots, when they fear a storm, to save the ship will cast out precious things. You, in some sort, may imitate their form, for else a tempest total ruin brings. Since bent against the gods, how can we speed? To all our actions, fortune is opposed. We must force some other way proceed to have the heavens of our affairs disposed. Give, sir, the state at least your title's place on some more happy man, not in effect. But with your shadow clothe him for a space, till he your realms from ruin may protect. This storm, once calmed, that now disturbs your state, and Asia free from any foreign host, he shall with haste resign the sovereign seat. These kingdoms gained again, which you have lost. All Bactria yet abides at your command. The Indians, lo, would die to do you good. Yea, many thousand armed stand, bent for your state to offer up their blood. What? Should we rush like beasts to needless strife? Be well prepared, and then your fortunes try. Brave minds should death despise, not loathing life. For fear of danger, cowards crave to die. But virtue first all hopes accounts doth cast, and of each mean to help maturely thinks. Then, when all else is done, death is the last, the which to meet true courage never shrinks. Now, for the time, let Bactria be our seat, to Bessus for the form your crown resign, who, when he once hath re-advanced your state, shall with your foes o'erthrow this charge confine.
Wretch, travail'st thou thy sovereign to betray? Such treason darest thou to our ears impart, such treason under trust? Stay, traitor, stay, my sword shall search what lurks within thy heart.
Sir, rein your rage. This but new trouble breeds. And weigh well what they are, what is the time. It may be this from ignorance proceeds, in thought and not in word, consist a crime. Since that against your enemies you go, be not severe in censoring subjects' parts, but tolerate your own, to grieve your foe. Now must we strive to gain, not lose men's hearts. It by all means shall be exactly tried, how first his brain such fancies did embrace, and if but simply, not puffed up with pride, he must be pardoned and restored to grace.
And of my subjects I would rather have than one to punish, them to guardon all.
If I have erred, no pardon, sir, I crave. First hear, and if I fail, then let me fall. I call the gods to testify my part, who can, commanding thoughts, clear truth afford. If ever treason harbored in my heart, straight let me die, not pitied, but abhorred. I counsel gave according to my skill. It was my upright mind that made me bold. And though my wit not answered to my will, still zeal, what it conceives must needs unfold. We should be loath to speak in such great affairs, where words are damned or balanced by the event. For if things fail, the fault is still thought theirs, who gave advice, though of a good intent. Great Prince, forget this not well-grounded grudge, who dare be free if thus for words rejected? At least examine first, before you judge. I rather die absolved than live suspected.
Your fond opinion justly might be feared, which seemed indeed sinistrously inclined. For at the first your speech to me appeared the poisoned birth of some malicious mind. But your purgation now hath taken place, and of your faith I will no further doubt. But hold you in the same degree of grace that you enjoyed before those words chanced out. I think that patron looks with speaking eyes as if his mind were mightily perplexed. Come, patron, tell what in thy bosom lies, by which thou seem'st so wonderfully vexed.
Sir, I would speak in private, if I could, that which affection fired with zeal affords. Let silence scale what friends with fear unfold. Take you my thoughts, none else shall have my words. Though only bound by voluntary choice, we follow you, all other hopes quite lost. Your body's shadows, the echoes of your voice as faithful now as when you flourished most. For where you are, we must remain with you. Since both our lots are in one vessel thrown, I wish our tent were made your lodging now, for we will save your life, or lose our own. We have abandoned Greece, our native soil, and our retreat no Bactria now attends. But those who us would of your person spoil, spoil us of all, whose all on you depends. Would God all yours were bent to do their due. Fame big by fear doth bring forth rumours rife. I grant it gross, if that his own were true, to trust a stranger with a monarch's life.
What sudden danger doth of late dismay you, such inconveniences that you forecast?
Sir, Bessus and Narbazannes betray you. This day to you or them will be the last. They feign repentance only for the form, till everything be for the fact prepared. The clouds are gathering, which do boast a storm, and they ere night mind to invade your guard.
I trust thy words. But yet I cannot wrong those who by nature love to me should bear. Shall I leave them who followed me so long? Then they may think I merit what I fear. I will await on what the heavens will send. For who can stand when fates his fall conspire? With mine own at least grieved will end. I live too long if they my death desire.
Take heed in time, sir, to this subtle Greek. The Grecian faith to all the world is known. I'm informed by he by all means doth seek to gratify your foe, has borne his own. And marvel not, though mercenary men who sell themselves so old, this is not strange. They have no god but gold, nor house. How then can they be constant who do live by change? Though this vain man preoccupy you thus, and such as would themselves abuse your grace, faith shall be found untainted still in us, when our accuser dare not show his face.
Of Alexander, those who hope for gain by traitorous means do but themselves deceive. Since none in earth do traitors more disdain, nor treason can in greater horror have.
Well, sir, you shall know shortly what we are. I will go see all your ensigns all displayed.
It better is, since things are gone so far, than seem but to mistrust, to be betrayed. Lo, Artabazus, I have acted here my part of greatness, and my glass is run. Now patron's speech doth evident appear. I see my end, yet can their course not shun.
The Bactrians only have embarked in this. Go to the Greeks, which if with courage done, when once your danger manifested is, the Persians all will follow after soon.
And what if I were gone to patron's tent, and had the Greeks for guard as you desire? He hath but thousands four, which are well bent, they 30,000 whom I fall conspire. And doing this I should their deed excuse, in giving them a cause who have most might. They may indeed my lenity abuse, but by my deed they shall pretend no right.
Oh, prince, to be bemoaned, who can but weep to see thee thus involved in such a state?
Retire you all, and seek yourselves to keep. I here attend the issue of my fate. Ye wonder that a wretch yet breathing stands, to whom the heavens no comfort can impart. Fear shall not make me fall by mine own hands. No, let another sin, though I must smart. None of you all have falsified your truth, but loyal still unto the end abide. Now, I you all disburden of your oath. Leave me alone, and for yourselves provide.
And they exit. Lots of stuff going on here. People saying names. You know, it's like I got a name, and then I said other people's names back, and it was like, yay, yay. There's sort of exits going on here with different people coming in. It's Darius holding council. What do we do? And some people go, fight, 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 fight. And some of them go, have you considered abdication? Have you considered just? I've got this great bloke over here. He's really good. He could step in for you like that. I mean, he's all lined up. He's all ready. It's a trap. He knows it's a trap. That's what I really like. He's sitting here going, there's no way out of this situation. The only way out of this situation is to get lots of people killed. Actually, no, we're just going to let this play out. There's something really nice about that as a situation. I'm liking Darius here, of just actually going, it's not just about me making big speeches and being sad. I'm actually thinking about other people. After getting some pretty bad news. I'm liking this. I'm liking this. We're back into. We had a dip in Act 3, and now it's gas, cooking with gas. Rachel.
The shape of this scene is so different from the rest of this so far. This is the first time that I felt that I understood everything. He finally gave up on the opaqueness of that language, on the, how everybody was saying, even for poetry, it's hard to understand. And I think that's because he's messing too much with the language and getting really technical and technically experimentative and losing a through line. But finally, people are talking to each other, and it really feels like dialogue. And he does give us some beautiful imagery in parts, but it's not just beautiful. It's actually communicating something and needing to give a message to other people. I really enjoyed this scene, and out of Croesus and this play, this is the scene that I've understood the most just hearing it.
Yeah, I'm starting to get a sense of a through line here that actually, yeah, with a bit of tinkering with the stuff we didn't like, actually, no, there is an arc here that's working. Okay, we might have to really turn hard on some of those corners, but actually, there's some good. I'm back in that first session zone before we hit into Act 3. Yeah, I'm liking this. Other thoughts? We're actually getting close to final thoughts because we've let things run on. So maybe actually, any thoughts about this scene specifically before we go to final thoughts? Anyone want to throw in before I go around the room? Liza.
Just that, if the previous scenes were character exposition for Alexander, this is character exposition for Darius. We've only seen him beforehand reacting to things, and now we see him being tested. And I think the worst treason that Bessus and Narbazannes are going to commit is to prevent Darius and Alexander from meeting. Because I'm pretty sure they're going to have Darius killed before he possibly can meet Alexander and be reunited with Sisigambis or with his daughter. They certainly said in their conspiracy scene that they were going to spread the rumor that he was dead. So now we see he's lost everything, including the people who followed him so long. They're abandoning him because they're traitors. He cannot abandon them because he's still their king. He can absolve them of their loyalty to him. He cannot absolve himself of his duty to them. And I think the playwright conveys this all rather well, the shape of the cage that Darius is in, which he sees very clearly, and how he bears up under it. Yes, 3/4 of the way through the play, I finally like Darius.
Well, I mean, in a sense, the problem was the only Darius we got was one speech at the beginning, and that before he came back, and so yeah, it was reactions to Darius without having enough to hang a hat on. That said, there isn't necessarily a lot more Darius action to go. So that question of appropriateness of title is always a question, but that's a marketing issue. I'm not worried about that. Eric, did you have anything on the scene?
I was just going to say that the whole sort of basically what Liza said about the cage that Darius is in and the situation that he's in is kind of reinforcing the idea that the Persians, especially in the previous act where we saw Sisigambis and Alexander going sort of he can't see the problem they're in. I've given them everything, but their freedom what's the problem, sort of thing. Why are they? Because he goes these captive princesses pierce my soul, so on and so forth, that they see what we see as our heaven, they see as hell. And I think that sort of is paralleled by Darius, who's kind of king of one of the probably most powerful armies, second powerful in this situation, loved by many of his subjects, but betrayed by several others. So, just an interesting idea.
Okay, so just a time for a few final thoughts about the play so far. We've all, in some way, shape, or form, been here throughout. Emily, do you have any final thoughts about what William's doing?
I think I'm back with you. I feel like I'm back on the narrative horse by the end here, and I still have some act structure notes of how to set up and pay off. And I guess I would finish by saying it is entirely appropriate that it isn't until Act 4 that Sir William has figured out how to even say the names of characters in a scene. So at least he is consistent. You will understand things by the end.
Yeah, we're back on the narrative horse. Liza, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone else, I'm finding this play frustrating, but I'm motivated to stay with it because, you know, uh, there's there's potential here. So yeah. So I will be really interested to find out what happens, and I'm hosting tomorrow. Although, if some of the participants ask me to go to Bactria and abdicate my crown just for a little while, I'll probably obey them because I trust you guys.
Rachel, any final thoughts?
Um. Uh. The up until this last scene that we did today, so much of this felt like a sort of moving tableau. A couple years ago, either the an art museum in Antwerp or Amsterdam, they did like a restoration for some of the pieces that they had on display of like from the Renaissance, and to promote that comeback, they did a moving sort of like they filmed people assembling into these paintings, and some of the stillness, the movement feels very minimal, and it feels like a lot of times people are doing asides or going off on their own, um, uh, and not. I am going to compare it to Croesus because Croesus was a little bit of a that lovable weirdo. This one feels like like teething or birthing pains or something. Like this is very much the writers coming through, and I'm seeing him come through in like the technicals, and this is something I think where he's really learning how to write and make a drama for the first time. The other one seems like a more successful transition, but this feels like a first attempt at that. I don't know. There's parts of this that don't feel raw, but rather undercooked. But the last scene, I don't know. Like I said, that moving tableau, but then that last scene completely just changes into the full-on, like a regular drama. So it's this. He's like really moving and trying to do all these different things and see what sticks or what works or doesn't work. This is. I don't know if it's successful in what it's doing, but it's really interesting seeing him, I guess, learn through this play.
Eric, any final thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting how there's a problem going how closely did they stick to the histories, but I mean that's not really important. It's just kind of interesting to sort of see the trope of not dropping names again. There's a problem going. Maybe it's just because he had trouble rhyming some of them, because putting them at the end of lines is very difficult. Like, what do you rhyme with Alexander? Or I don't know, Narbazannes or something. But I don't know. As someone who writes myself, I kind of respect him for what he's done. So I'm going, yeah, wow, okay. But then if this is a sort of what's it called? I don't know if it would make sense at pace, or if that's just because we've been stopping a lot.
Yeah, it's a question of in performance with the odd name dropped in and some restructuring. How does this land? How much information do you get across? It's one of those questions always I have in my mind when thinking about a text like this. Of going, right, how many different productions can I see could come out of this material? In fundamentally different productions. And in terms of restructuring, I was struggling when we hit Act 3 of going, right, what's the shape of this show? Where is this show going? And there's still a little bit of question, because I'm not going to be here tomorrow to look at that, of actually how you incorporate the way the play ends and where does the play end, because you could refocus it really on Darius, or you can stick with the Darius Alexandra sort of opposition and the fact they never meet. if they never meet. Who knows what happens in the last act and a half, and whether something in staging could be done to actually highlight that and point at that. Whether certain things moved around. I think I said in the chat, I almost want to move the traitors scene to a sort of mini scene as the court's assembling, that they've got the plan, with heavy cuts just to get to the point, and to really restructure Act 3 to be a sort of unified whole that's dealing with the mess that Darius is going to be told about, that it's more related to him in some fashion. But yeah, I can now sort of see different routes through the text. And yeah, what I'm really liking about Alexander is, he can write. He can really write. I'm not sure he can structure, but he can write. He can tell him to write. He'll blast it out across the page. But thematically, it's there. I think thematically he knows what he's doing. I just don't think narratively he's thinking all the way through, and he gets sidetracked. That's what went wrong with Croesus. He got sidetracked with some stuff he wanted to do, and so the narrative flow slightly fell apart. But that was more episodic, whereas this doesn't feel episodic, actually. It feels like there's a through line. So yeah, I'm hopeful. I'm sad I won't be here tomorrow. Any other final thoughts? Rachel, you're waving.
No, how you said he just gets sidetracked. I think that's the more you write or the more you act or do anything in the arts, the more, like, because he's writes so much, and poetry, like, is how you figure yourself out emotionally, but also how you figure out how to use language. And I think he gets lost in that, and he doesn't know how to edit that back. Whereas you have somebody like Marlowe, who you can tell he's written a lot, and he chooses to cut back so much because he'll let it go unsaid and let people see, like, the unsaid stuff. And even, other people who aren't, I think, as sparse, even I think they cut back with their language. And I think he just has he's not developed his editorial sense yet in this play until maybe that last scene.
Any more for any more? Otherwise, it's time to close the session. So all that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. What are we but a puff of breath?